7:45, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin.
Yeah, do you want us to go through some of the day's headlines? It's Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikalova, and broadcaster and journalist Andy Jones. Top of the morning to you both. Anna, let's kick off with your story. We're covering it a lot on the show today. The Windsor Castle break-in.
Yeah, I remember I was in the newsroom that Christmas Day when it happened. We were all pretty shocked, and some of the detail that's coming out of this story is remarkable.
What time did the news get through to you? Can you remember?
It was just after lunchtime. I remember I had the splash and it wasn't very good, and I was almost relieved that a better story had come in, but obviously not relieved by, this is the reality of newspapers. We do like things happening, but yeah, some of the things that jump out to me are things like he'd said that if he couldn't get the Queen, that Prince Charles would be his next target. Sort of quite scary, and that he was in the grounds of the castle for about 2 hours before he was actually caught.
That's interesting. So you were watching at about sort of 11 midday-ish in the newsroom. Yeah. We were waiting. We didn't get to see the Queen's final Christmas Day speech until, 3? So you were in that funny time when most people are just filling themselves full of turkey.
Yeah, we had the newspaper very kindly provided a Christmas lunch for us, because when you work Christmas Day, normally, they do something like that. On a Sunday paper, it only happens, once every 7 years.
So when you got to hear the news, he would presumably have just been arrested some 2 hours after he first got in.
Yeah, it started
when you look at the timescale, it's a bit frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, and it was a few hours before deadline, so the paper actually got it over the line. The chief reporter went out there straight away. It was all it was quite an active Christmas Day that year.
He's obviously a very deeply disturbed individual. Andy. And
one of the horrible details of the story is the way he was talking to an AI chatbot about it all.
There are a number of interesting aspects about this story. First of all, we talk about him being a disturbed individual, but he was able to get hold of a nylon ladder, he was able to get hold of an iron mask that he'd sort of fashioned himself, he was able to get hold of a crossbow. And you think, well, somebody's mentally literate to acquire these things, and also the controls on these items need to be a bit higher. But as you say, this AI chatbot called Sarai, apparently he was speaking to, and an AI chatbot girlfriend, it basically, you sort of chat to this computer-based device, and it says, how's your day, whichever, and it's sort of quite inane, basic chat. But AI develops intelligence of its own as you speak to it, so it then understands things that you're talking about, things that you talk about. It then researches itself online and parrots these things back to you. And he was talking about his plan of killing the Queen and had to be secret about it, and etc. And the chatbot was saying things to him, that's a very wise plan of action, best of luck with it, and all this sort of thing, because it does.
So it was reassuring him, and actually sort of...
Quite, and so it doesn't differentiate between your day at work, of you saying, I really don't like my boss, or the traffic was terrible, and your plan to kill the Queen. It doesn't really understand the seriousness of it. It just understands how to carry on a conversation and reinforce and be compassionate. And that is the same compassion applied whether you're planning to kill the Queen or whether you're just mildly annoyed with your day at work.
And so many of our viewers have been getting in touch this morning saying, I thought treason was a much bigger offence than just getting 9 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been convicted of treason, but not high treason, and there's a difference, apparently.
There is, but even treason is very rare to get a conviction for. I mean, there have only been
was the last case.
There have been a handful, and of course, it used to be a hanging offence. I think the last person to be hanged for treason was in the 40s.
Lord Haw.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
He was hanged for treason. But apparently it would have been high treason if he'd actually confronted the Queen and raised the bow towards her. Yeah. That would be high treason. But the planning and getting as far as he did with a lethal weapon that was armed is only treason. And for that he's
he was walking around the grounds for 2 hours. He had plenty of time to change his mind, right? I mean, this was a very deliberate... we talk about his mental capacity, it was a very deliberate act. The number of items he acquired, it was an offence of the most seriousness, and 9 years... I thought it was punching a bit low.
Yeah, he got tasered for that. He'll remain in psychiatric hospital for now, and then he'll be transferred into custody, into a regular prison after he's received the treatment he needs. That's the latest on that case. Andy, shall we move on to your story from page of the Telegraph, the anorexia scandal? What's this story about?
Yeah, and this is a desperately upsetting story, and I apologise and would flag up a trigger warning for anyone who's suffered with conditions like anorexia or in their family. This is a 24-year-old woman who has been essentially given the right to die by a judge, which is really unusual because her body mass index is now so low. 8 to 10, between 8 and 10. A 24-year-old woman would normally have a body mass index of 8.5 to 25. So even if you don't understand those numbers, you can see this is a woman who's, a third almost.
Well, she's on death's door at the moment.
Yeah, they said.
And the judge is more or less allowing her to go home and just receive palliative care.
Yes, and this is an individual that's called Patricia. She is days or even hours from death, and she can leave and receive palliative care at home. But her parents, obviously desperately anguished about this. They're saying she's changing her mind. She's saying that she wants to die, but also can they resuscitate her if she's brought, if she collapses. She was saying that she wants to be treated at home and well, not treated at home, but just allowed to die at home 1 minute, and then the next day she's saying actually I want to go back to an eating disorder clinic. And this is these are also always desperate cases about the right of the individual versus what healthcare can provide and the rights of families.
And it's an interesting one.
A really complicated moral issue. We were talking about the European Court of Human Rights earlier, and enshrined in that is the right to life. And doctors should be doing their absolute utmost to keep somebody alive. And I think 24 years old, she's clearly, if you believe the statements of the family, she's clearly somebody that's confused.
But the family are saying they're appalled by the decision that a judge is effectively, granting their daughter death. They would like to see an intervention to try and save her life, but she has the supremacy of choice to die.
You'd certainly consider that if this has been as far as a judge, this Patricia has been proactive enough forcing this through that she has said on more than one occasion she definitely wants to die. But this is, if you believe the parents, she's saying, well, actually I want to go back to an eating disorder clinic, can I be treated? This is a very complicated issue.
It must be just dreadful, particularly for her parents.
Yeah.
Anna, just so that we can end on is it a higher note? I don't know. How to cheat. A professor has confiscated pens from his students. Why?
So the student has ingeniously been able to write the answers to the exam on these pens, and if you've got a photo, it's quite remarkable. In tiny, tiny, tiny script, it looks like he's carved out the answers on just a normal biro.
Wow.
Yeah, which I love because there's so much.
There it is.
It's nice to have a bit of what you'd call low-tech cheating, because at the moment it's all computers and phones and iPads and getting answers that way, and plagiarism, and this is just a bit of old school cheating.
For those who can't see the pictures, if you listen on radio, that's basically a standard big biro with tiny, tiny lettering. How on earth would you see it? You'd have to take a magnifying glass into the exam, presumably.
The work that goes into inscribing in such detail on the side of a biro, you'd think, having inscribed that, you would have actually remembered it anyway.
Well, you'd also, it's far more effort to cheat than it is to actually learn it. And of course, this is perilous because in a moment of anxiety, if he started chewing his biro in the test, all that work would be ruined.
He's lost off the answer.
Looking at the chewed bits, saying what part of high theory is that?
Put the hard work into actually just doing a bit of revision, surely.
Yeah.
Right, I think we're very nearly at time to say thank you very much indeed for coming in again. And we'll be back with you a bit later. But right now, you'll want to know what's happening weather-wise.